Hi, this is Miss Nelson, and welcome to the context for War Photographer by Carol Ann Duffy. Today we're going to be looking at key 3 points of information. We're going to be looking at Carol Ann Duffy herself, we're going to be looking at the job of a war photographer, and we're going to be looking at the inspirations behind the poem. Now, Carol Ann Duffy is actually the current Poet Laureate. It's her job to discuss public events in terms of poetry, and she also hires and commissions other poets to discuss events. She's the first openly LGBT person, the first Scottish person, and the first female to take the title of Poet Laureate. Her poems are often very emotive. They talk about the extremes of emotions like anger, hatred. She's fascinated by the contrast between poetry and photography. She has a friend that is a war photographer and admires not only the tenacity of them, but the way they tell a story through limited images in the same way she does with limited words. When writing this poem, she thought about the long-lasting effects on people who have to force themselves not to help others in a time of crisis, and what the public's reaction is. She views the public as being desensitised to what we see. Carol Ann Duffy is fascinated with the idea of war photographers. She's friends with a few of them and asked them about their experiences. Their primary job is to take photographs of war zones or war-torn environments and to not involve themselves with the conflict itself. A war photographer's job is to remain neutral. They are not allowed to involve themselves in a war, nor are they allowed to interfere with injured or dying people. They often photograph the after effects of war on a country, but occasionally they will attend active combat sites. There is an official law protecting them. Due to the conventions of armed warfare, they're not allowed to be targeted by warring armies and therefore will always strive to remain a neutral party. However, they are sometimes targeted by groups of people, as some photographers carry fame and can be taken hostage. This is rare, but not unheard of. Also, despite being protected, accidents can happen. War photographers can be killed whilst in the line of duty. It's usually accidental causes of death. Now, the inspiration for this poem comes from a variety of sources. Firstly, the image used in the poem suggests a foreign land covered in dust, and it draws comparisons between war-torn lands and the rural peace of Britain. Secondly, the running children in a nightmare heat line seems to reference a particular photograph that was circulating at the time the poem was written. This was a photograph called Napalm Girl that showed a young 9-year-old Vietnamese girl running naked towards a camera in extreme pain after her village had been napalm bombed. Thirdly, the poem was published in a series of poems in 1985. There were lots of wars that happened in the 1960s to the 1980s. Carol Ann Duffy's photographer friend covered a lot of these wars in that time. We understand that there is a deliberate reference to the fact that wars are not fought in Britain. The people dying are all in another country where the British public do not have to worry about them. Okay, now that you know this, try to revise these 3 points. For every quote you look at, try to create a sentence that includes one of these key points of information. Try to further your research on these 3 topics: the poet, Carol Ann Duffy, incidents involving war photographers, and the various wars that have used war photographers. See how far back this job dates. You'd actually be very surprised. And now that you know this, good luck.